My niece Emily is amazing. She looks just like my sister did when she was young. I'm divorcing an old ugly woman like you and I'm gonna marry Emily. We've been together for 21 years. My young and beautiful body feels better than your wife. I kept it a secret to avoid hurting you. I'm sorry it came out. Across the table from just the four of us. My husband and niece sat next to each other. They sat closely together, looking at us with teary eyes. It was obvious that their arms touching each other were unnaturally entwined. I don't understand. Emily is your niece. Divorce. Blood-related or not, it doesn't matter. I love Emily with all my heart. My husband's eyes were filled with seriousness as he spoke. They were the eyes of someone truly in love. I had never seen my husband look like this in over 20 years of being together. Hey, I have something to say too. Karen, my sister-in-law, who was sitting next to me, spoke coldly to my husband and niece. Unlike me, who was so shocked I was losing myself, my sister-in-law remained strong and calm. Look at this. My sister-in-law suddenly took something out and placed it on the table. I could see my husband and Emily's expressions gradually change as they looked at it. And then, something tragic happened that I would never experience again in my life. My name is Sarah. I'm a housewife. I married my husband 37 years ago. After getting married, both my husband and I loved children and tried to have them early on, but we couldn't naturally conceive one, so we went to a fertility clinic. The clinic couldn't find any reason for infertility on my part, but my husband was diagnosed with azoospermia. At the time, infertility was often thought to be the woman's problem, so I was grateful my husband came with me, and we never thought the issue could be on his side. I still vividly remember the look of lost confidence on his face when he was diagnosed with it. The doctor told us, "There's no treatment, you have to give up." I love children, so it was hard to accept, but I decided to shift my mindset to enjoy a happy life with just my husband. However, contrary to my feelings, my husband's attitude towards me began to change significantly around that time. My husband started being very sarcastic about everything. At first, I thought, it's understandable to be bitter after finding out you're the cause we will never have children. He'll go back to being his usual kind self soon, and I accepted it patiently. But his aggressive and cold attitude continued. Around the same time, I heard that my husband's sister, my sister-in-law, got divorced. Since their parents had already passed away, Karen had to raise her 2-year-old daughter Emily on her own. Feeling sorry for her situation, John and I began helping my sister-in-law with childcare around that time. I always loved children, so I adored my little niece Emily. I remember buying her a stuffed rabbit plushie she liked, playing pretend with her, and loving her as if she is my own daughter. My husband also adored Emily. Even before my sister-in-law's divorce, our families were close and often spent time together, so it didn't take long for our niece to warm up to us. Looking back, my husband might have been smitten with her even back then. Even though we lived under the same roof, he wouldn't look me in the eye and only talked about Emily and Karen. It hurts to see him lose interest in me, but when I brought up Emily and Karen, he seemed so happy that I ended up forgiving him. I convinced myself that this was the way to get along with my husband and went on with my daily life. My niece has grown up, became independent, and now lives on her own. But my husband remains cold to me. He comes home for dinner every day, but I have no idea where he is or what he's doing during the weekends. Despite such a terrible married life, we're still together for many years. I was reluctant to stir things up by getting a divorce, so I tolerated my husband's selfish behavior. Looking back, maybe that kindness wasn't the best approach. One Saturday morning, my husband had gone out early, as usual, just after sunrise. I woke up at my usual time and was cleaning the house alone. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. I rushed to the intercom screen and saw my sister-in-law. It's unusual for her to visit suddenly. I wondered what was up, but then I noticed her tense face and heavy breathing on the screen. I realized something serious had happened. I invited her into the house. "Sarah, I'm sorry for the sudden visit. I have an urgent matter to discuss." Can you look at this first? As she said this, she hurriedly took her phone out of her bag, and I saw several traces of cold sweat on her forehead. Then she showed me a video clip saved on her phone. This video clip, this can't be. I don't believe it. The video my sister-in-law showed me was of my husband and Emily walking arm in arm into a motel. I couldn't hear their conversation, but it was clear from their behavior that they were more than just uncle and niece, they are too intimate, like lovers. I felt the blood drained from my face. I happened to see them in town earlier, so I called out to them. But they didn't notice me, and when I looked closely, they were walking arm in arm, which felt strange. So I followed them for a while, and they went into a motel together. But maybe they didn't go in there for that. They're fully blood-related, uncle and niece. I can't believe it, there must be some explanation. Confronted with such a shocking fact, I couldn't believe it right away. Whether she knew how I felt or not, my sister-in-law made a shocking confession. Sarah, I've suspected those two for a while. I didn't want to believe it, so I kept telling myself it couldn't be true. But seeing them walking together with my own eyes confirmed my suspicions. They're guilty. Her serious gaze heightened my anxiety. My husband and his niece are having an affair. They're blood-related. Just thinking about it made me feel sick. It seemed my sister-in-law felt the same. The air inside our house felt heavy, and time passed painfully. Karen and I decided to confront John and Emily about the truth. The video clip my sister-in-law took of them entering the motel together wasn't strong enough evidence of an affair. If I were to choose divorce, I would need strong evidence that they cannot deny. My sister-in-law and I decided to hire a private investigator to follow my husband and niece. After discussing it, we decided to split the cost of hiring a professional investigator. And so began our plan for revenge. A few days later, Sunday at 7 p.m. Karen and I, having eaten a hearty dinner in preparation for the planned confrontation, brought the evidence photos from the detective agency and called John and Emily to the living room. They even arrived together, possibly returning from a date. The most sacred space for guests in the home my husband and I had lived in for over 20 years. The LED lights shone brightly, as if to expose the wrongdoings hidden in the night. All the players sat in the chairs around the table illuminated by that light. My husband looked annoyed. I can't refuse my sister, but what do you want, Sarah, he grumbled. My niece looked at me with a puzzled expression. Both of them looked at me with contempt. Under their unpleasant gaze, I began to speak. You're having an affair with Emily, aren't you? The moment he heard those words, my husband's eyes widened. He looked like a prey sensing danger from a predator. He was caught off guard and couldn't hide his surprise. On the other hand, my niece showed no signs of being shaken. She looked at me with bored, damp eyes, like a child whose prank had been discovered and the fun ended. Auntie, an affair? I don't know what you're talking about. It seems like Emily plans to play dumb. I have proof, look at this. I was really shocked by her unexpectedly calm demeanor. However, while trying to appear as composed as possible, I laid out the photos of their affair on the table. There were over 20 photos of them entering the hotel, at the reception, and leaving after their time there, all taken on different days. There's no way they can talk their way out of this. Let them panic. I was confident of my victory. For a moment, it felt like time stood still, everyone was silent. The white light above flickered for a moment. My husband, after looking at the photos, finally spoke. Well? Yes, I'm having an affair with Emily. No, it's not just an affair, it's serious. I'm truly in love with Emily. She's just like you were when you were younger, so beautiful. Like a goddess. Well, this is a good opportunity to make an announcement. Sarah, I'm divorcing you, you old and ugly woman. And I'm planning to marry Emily. It was a shocking confession. My sister-in-law Karen is sitting next to me, she muttered, what, angrily under her breath. Aunt Sarah, we have been in love since I was in high school. Uncle John has hated you since then. I am young, beautiful and with a very desirable body. Unlike you, Auntie Sarah, your face is full of wrinkles and spots like a pug. Not only have you aged, but your personality has become old and boring, completely different from my youthful freshness. You have been a source of stress for him for a long time." My niece, raising her voice to insult me, looked very pleased and lively. Her mocking voice made the fact that I had raised her like my own daughter but has been betraying me for years feels very real. I cursed my own stupidity for never doubting their relationship. We've loved each other for years, defying the ridiculous norm that blood relatives shouldn't be intimately in love with each other. In fact, it's because our blood is thick that such deep love and passion, like the ocean, can blossom. Sarah, you as an outsider from our family wouldn't understand. I must confess, I have always thought my sister was beautiful and loved her as a woman. It must be the mystery of our blood connection that sparked these feelings. Watching Emily grow up to look just like my beautiful sister, I realized it was fate that brought Emily back to me after my sister's divorce. My husband, with a blissful expression, began to speak about his love for his sister Karen and Emily. His nose was red, and he seemed to be intoxicated with himself. My niece was leaning heavily on his shoulder, gazing at his face with drowsy eyes. Her cheeks were flushed, as if they were in a world of their own. I felt a complex mix of disappointment and contempt. My sister-in-law, who was sitting next to me, finally spoke. "John, thanks for your philosophy on incest. But look at this and see if you can still continue such nonsense." With that, she laid a photo on the table. "You're cheating with other women besides Emily. You talked big, but it seems any young woman will do." The photo showed my husband entering a hotel intimately with a woman who wasn't Emily. Upon seeing the photo, their blissful expressions changed immediately. My husband was frozen, staring at the photo. The color drained from his face. Right at that moment, my niece was trembling with rage. Her face was bright red, and her lips quivered. She suddenly started screaming. "John! What is this?" As she said this, she lunged at my husband. My husband let out a foolish yelp as he was pulled off his chair by my niece. When he fell to the floor, my niece straddled him and began punching him in the face while screaming hysterically. The room echoed with Emily's shrieks and John's stupid cries. Before I could even react to the horror of her calling him John, thinking, "This is bad, I need to stop this before someone gets killed," my sister-in-law quickly moved behind my niece and grabbed her arms. Then she pushed her onto the living room sofa. "Emily, calm down. This won't solve anything." My sister-in-law, her voice trembling, scolded my niece from the sofa. Scolded by her own mother, Emily sobbed with tear-filled eyes. "But John cheated. John cheated on me." "Cheating? What are you talking about? You had an affair too, and with my brother. It's disgusting. I never want to see either of your faces again." With that, my sister-in-law quietly released my niece's arm. "What? Mom, you're not going to support me?" Emily's face twisted in shock as she reached out to her mom with her trembling arm. But Karen, her face full of anger, slapped her hand away. Then, turning to my niece and husband, she spoke firmly. "It's disgusting that my own daughter, whom I raised with care, had a relationship with my brother. And it's even more disgusting that my own brother looked at me sexually. Thanks to both of you, I feel like I'll be crazy for the rest of my life. From today, I'm cutting ties with both of you." It was my sister-in-law's firm declaration of disownment. My niece, who had been crying like a child on the sofa, sobbed "no" in shock. Hearing those words, my husband, who had been pathetically stunned by the sudden shock, let out a cry. "Sis! Don't do this to me. I want us to be close until we die. Please, don't cut me off. How about this, we can all live together, Emily, you, and me. Look, I'm begging you." With that, he stumbled over and knelt in front of my sister-in-law. My husband sincerely begging her to reconsider cutting ties with him. My niece and I were both stunned by this sight. But my sister-in-law didn't move, looking down at him with a cold, frozen gaze. A moment of silence passed. I regained my composure and organized my thoughts. It seemed that in my husband's mind, I was the one who would leave this house. Even in this chaotic moment, he treated me with so much disrespect. A disgusting monkey who can't control his desires and doesn't think about me at all. Watching my husband kneeling and begging, I felt the anger I had been suppressing started to bubble up inside me. When the anger reached a boiling point, it bursted out like popping bubbles. I turned to John and said coldly, "I'll give you what you want. I'll divorce you. I don't want to see you or Emily's face ever again." I told my husband of my decision to divorce him. But before I could finish my statement, he pathetically crawled over to me and made a shocking plea. "Fine, Sarah. I'll divorce you as you wish. But in return, make Karen take back her decision, cutting ties with me." Clinging to me with a desperate look on his face, I was utterly disgusted. Even now, he still tries to treat me like a servant. No. He's hopeless. I quickly pulled out the divorce papers I had prepared just in case, from my bag. I had hoped to resolve things peacefully through discussion and had wished I wouldn't need to use them, but it seemed I was too stupid to even hope. I took out a pen and signed everything and handed it all to my pathetic husband who was crawling on the floor. My husband frantically signed everything on the divorce papers. "All right, I'll sign this. But you have to convince my sister to change her mind. Sarah, only you can do this. I'm counting on you." My husband looked at me with hopeful eyes. "All right. I promise I'll keep my word. Looks like you're done. Well, take care, John and Emily. Goodbye." Once I confirmed my husband had finished writing the divorce papers, I quickly snatched them and put them in my bag. Then I whispered to my sister-in-law, "Let's go," and she agreed. We hurriedly left the house. As we were getting ready to get into the car, I could hear my niece yelling at my husband. "It's your fault I got disowned by Mom. It's all your fault." She kept shouting repeatedly, furiously. She really turned out to be a hopeless child, I thought, as I listened to her shrill voice while fastening my seatbelt. Soon, my sister-in-law started the car, and the shouting faded into the distance, swallowed by the night. After that, with nowhere else to go, I moved into my sister-in-law's apartment, and we began living together. My sister-in-law decided to cut ties with my ex-husband and her daughter, making sure to avoid any contact with them. One evening, the apartment doorbell rang repeatedly in quick succession. When I looked through the peephole on the front door, I saw Emily standing there. I could hear her sobbing through the thin door. I quickly told this to my sister-in-law, and after a moment of hesitation, she went to the front door. Without unlocking the door, she spoke to my niece through it. What happened?" Hearing her mother's voice for the first time in a while, my niece cried out happily, "Mom. Mom. Help me. I'm being stalked by Uncle John." My sister-in-law and I were both shocked by her words. "Stalked? How did that happen?" My niece, sobbing, began to explain to my confused sister-in-law. "Mom, after our confrontation, I broke up with Uncle. I realized he was cheating on me, and it was his fault you disowned me. But he still seems to like me. The day after I dumped him, he started showing up at my office. Every day, he just stares at me through the window from outside. It was really creepy, so I tried to avoid looking at him, but one day I accidentally made eye contact. He looked at me with those dog-like eyes, so happy to finally be noticed, and yelled, 'Emily, I love you.' It was so scary." After finishing her story, my niece burst into loud sobs. I was shocked by the bizarre behavior of my husband described by my niece, and worried that the noise might be heard in other apartment units. My sister-in-law let out a deep, heavy sigh. "Well, you reap what you sow," she said coldly. My sister-in-law coldly dismissed her daughter. My niece suddenly stopped crying, perhaps not expecting this cold response. Then she started frantically trying to open the locked doorknob. "Mom. Open up. Let me in. Help me. The old iron door creaked and shook. The doorknob was being twisted so violently it seemed like the door might break open any moment. Emily. Stop it. I told you we're done. If you don't leave, I'll call the police. When my sister-in-law shouted, the sound of the doorknob being turned suddenly stopped. The sobbing resumed, but after a while, it also faded away. I heard footsteps going down the stairs, and then they too disappeared. After confirming my niece had left, my sister-in-law returned to the room and sat down on the floor chair. After letting out a long sigh, she collapsed onto the table in front of her. From her posture, I could tell she was extremely exhausted and mentally nearing her limit. I was also shocked by my niece's sudden visit, but my sister-in-law, caught in a nonsensical quarrel between her daughter and brother, must have been dealing with unimaginable stress. I made some warm green tea for my sister-in-law and offered it with some snacks. My sister-in-law whispered, "Thank you," with a faint smile. "Sarah, I'm really sorry." Emily again. "Karen, don't worry about me. You should do what you think is best." But was it really okay to send Emily away like that? If we try to cuddle her now, it will only make things worse. As her mother, it's my responsibility to raise her properly again. For that, I have to push her away for now. My sister-in-law spoke firmly, her lips tight, her eyes staring intensely into the distance. I gently placed my hand on her shoulder. However, the choice my sister-in-law made with a heavy heart would lead to further tragedy. One morning on a day off, as Karen and I were getting ready to go shopping because it was sunny, my sister-in-law's cell phone rang with its familiar ringtone. But for some reason, I had a bad feeling at that moment. My sister-in-law checked the number on the screen and said, "It's an unknown number," before answering the call with a frown. Feeling guilty but driven by a sense of curiosity, I strained to listen to the conversation. "Hello, who is this?" The person on the other end responded to my sister-in-law's voice. "Good morning, this is the police." "Is this Karen Smith's phone?" The caller was the police. My sister-in-law whispered to me, "It's a call from the police. Your daughter Emily and her boyfriend are currently at the station. We need to talk to you as well, so we will be coming over shortly." My sister-in-law reported again, "The police are coming over now." Bad premonitions always seem to come true. I realized that my husband and niece were going to cause more trouble, and I felt stressful things are coming our way. My sister-in-law, with the phone to her ear, started cleaning the kitchen in a fluster, nodding to the police's conversation. I followed her lead, starting to clean the house to distract myself from what's going to happen next and stop thinking. The police arrived. Initially, the police only intended to speak with my sister-in-law, but when they learned I was John's ex-wife, they asked to speak with me as well. We apologized for the sudden visit. This morning, Emily and her boyfriend were arrested on assault charges. A burly police officer began to explain the situation. My sister-in-law and I were shocked by the word arrest. "They assaulted John, your brother, causing bruises and fractures. John called us this morning, and we've been talking to him. Ms. Karen, Ms. Sarah, do you have any information about this incident?" I was speechless. Emily had found a new boyfriend without us knowing. She and her boyfriend went to intimidate my increasingly obsessive ex-husband with violence. And they injured him. My husband called the police, and that's why Emily and her boyfriend were arrested. While Karen was talking nervously with the police officer, I got a call on my cell phone. I recognized the number. It was John's number, which I had already deleted from my contacts. "Hello, long time no talk. What's up?" When I answered, I heard my ex-husband's weakened voice. I already knew his situation from the police, but I pretended not to know. "Sarah, listen calmly. I'm in the hospital right now. I was nearly killed by Emily and that guy who claims to be her boyfriend. I suffered life-threatening injuries. Emily seems to be mind-controlled by that big brute. Emily, following his orders and attacking me, looked like she was possessed. Sarah, I need you to save Emily from that thug. As soon as I recover from my injuries. Before my ex-husband could finish his rambling, I dropped the call. It may seem heartless, but I felt nothing for my weakened ex-husband. He was a fool I had already left. Whatever happens to him doesn't matter to me at all. The same went for my niece, whom I had raised like a daughter for years. My only concern was for Karen, who was being tormented and emotionally disturbed by these two crazy people. I felt it was my duty to support her in return for everything. As I was lost in thought, I heard Karen calling my name. The police officer wanted to speak with me as well. To explain Emily's assault incident, I recounted the entire saga between my husband and niece, including my personal feelings. The police officer listened to my story the whole time. After I finished talking, he said, "That must have been very difficult," showing sympathy in his eyes. His gentle gaze made me burst into tears. The officer handed me a handkerchief. I had been trying to stay strong, but I was truly exhausted. The emotions I had been holding back overflowed, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Karen must have felt the same, as she also started to cry. The officer closed his notebook with a snap. "Leave the rest of the case to us. Both of you may still have tough days ahead, but we are always here to listen if you need us. Even if it's just to chat about regular things, don't hesitate to call me. My name is Johnson. You two hard workers will surely see happy days again. We'll do everything we can to help make that happen." Officer Johnson said this with a shy smile. His strong yet kind face gave me a comforting sense of security. Things will work out, no suffering lasts forever. Thinking this, I felt warmth spread through my entire being. 2 months have passed since then. John's injuries were supposed to take about 6 months to heal, but after a month in the hospital, he was sent home to recover. John, unable to care for himself, must be living alone, crying out in pain. Emily, on the other hand, received a suspended sentence in court, while her boyfriend and accomplice got a prison term due to his prior offenses. Her temporary lover was ditched the moment he was sentenced to prison. My niece was fired from her job. Around that time, Emily, now a wreck, came crying to my sister-in-law's apartment several times, but each time she was coldly turned away. After turning her away, Karen would always mutter painfully, "I want to forget about Emily, I don't want to get involved." Then, to change the subject, she would talk a lot about her knitting hobby. I also demanded compensation for infidelity from Emily and my ex-husband. Their circumstances, whether hospitalization or probation, didn't concern me. One day, I found that $200,000 had been deposited in my account, from both of them, as compensation. The deposit was made less than a week after I demanded the compensation. I wondered where they got the money, but was impressed they managed to pay. Then, during a rare drinking session with Karen, who usually avoided talking about them, revealed the truth. My ex-husband, noticing my niece's inability to pay after losing her job, proposed to cover the compensation in exchange for getting back together with her. My niece accepted the proposal. So half of the total amount paid by my niece was actually covered by my ex-husband. As expected, after the $200,000 was paid, my niece disappeared from my ex-husband's life. Karen said she received a frantic call from John saying he couldn't reach Emily. Upon further inquiry, it turns out my ex-husband borrowed money from a consumer finance company to cover my niece's compensation. He managed to pay his own portion from his savings, but didn't have enough to cover the amount needed to win Emily back. This was because John had also lost his job. After being dumped by my niece, he started stalking her, which caused him to miss work, eventually leading to hospitalization and losing his job. Now he's using the borrowed money from the finance company to get by day to day. Truly, he's a hopeless man. Since then, I've continued living with Karen in her apartment. 2 adult women living together, without any worries or lovers' quarrels. Karen told me, "Sarah, we may not be blood related, but we've faced family struggles together like true sisters. Because of you, I was able to keep going. Let's continue to enjoy living together." Her words fill me with a strange sense of joy. Unable to hide my blushing, she looked at me and laughed joyfully. They say, a close friend is better than a distant relative, and it's true. My sister-in-law and I are not blood related, in cold terms, we are strangers. But this relationship is comforting. Just two adult women, without a label for our relationship, yet we've known each other for over 20 years. My life now is more fulfilling and enjoyable than when I lived with the man I vowed to love in a beautiful wedding dress. I am happy now.